federal judge has made clear through his ruling that he believes that Donald Trump and his former lawyer, John Eastman, likely committed felonies with their attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Now, regardless of what this judge thinks, I want to make clear that he does not have the ability to prosecute Trump for these alleged felonies, but he does have the ability to help hand down rulings in regard to what kind of documents can be subpoenaed in the investigation into January 6th. Now, here are the details. Judge David O. Carter of the Central District of California released a court filing in which he wrote that Trump, quote, more likely than not, end quote, committed felony obstruction, conspired to defraud the United States, and dishonestly conspired with Eastman to obstruct the joint session of Congress by trying to have his election loss overturned. Carter also ordered Eastman, and this is where he has some power, to turn over his emails to the January 6th committee after he refused to cooperate with their investigation after getting subpoenaed. Now, he actually issues some pretty harsh statements in this court filing. I want to read you a few excerpts from it. For instance, on page 36, he writes that the illegality of the plan was obvious. Our nation was founded on the peaceful transition of power, epitomized by George Washington laying down his sword to make way for democratic elections. Ignoring this history, President Trump vigorously campaigned for the vice president to single-handedly determine the results of the 2020 election. He continues to write that, as Vice President Pence stated, no vice president in American history has ever asserted such authority. Every American, and certainly the president of the United States, knows that in a democracy, leaders are elected, not installed. With a plan this bold, President Trump knowingly tried to subvert this fundamental principle. And then he also writes, based on the evidence, the court finds it more likely than not that President Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct the joint session of Congress on January 6th, 2021. Now, again, neither Carter nor the January 6th committee have the authority to prosecute Trump for criminal conduct. Carter acknowledges this in his statement. It's really up to the DOJ to do something about this. And he's hoping that with this type of statement, this type of filing, maybe it'll convince Merrick Garland, the attorney general, to do something about this. He writes, more than a year after the attack on our Capitol, the public is still searching for accountability. If Dr. Eastman and President Trump's plan had worked, it would have permanently ended the peaceful transition of power, undermining American democracy and the Constitution. If the country does not commit to investigating and pursuing accountability for those responsible, the court fears January 6th will repeat itself. I would venture to say, Cenk, that those fears are very likely to come true because the thought of Trump actually facing prosecution for these felonies is, in my mind, just completely impossible. We don't ever hold people in positions of power accountable, certainly not former presidents.
Yeah, so there's a couple of important things here. First of all, there's a specific crime that's mentioned, felony obstruction of justice, or in this case, of a session of Congress, right? And so did Trump do that? Well, here's a judge stating on the record that he most likely did it. Obviously, you'd have to adjudicate it all the way through, but for the purpose of his ruling, he has to decide, was there a potential crime committed here, and should hence does Congress have the right to these documents? And he says yes. Now, was that crime actually committed? There's absolutely no question about it. I mean, Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon wrote a book about how they planned to commit that crime, and that President Trump was involved. You've got the text from Mark Meadows to Ginny Thomas, among others. Trump absolutely, positively did not want Pence, and he has said it 1,000 times publicly, did not want Pence to certify the election. That in itself is obstructing Congress in actually declaring who the actual president is. It's against the law. So just understand, there's almost no question that Trump didn't just do something wrong, he committed a crime in trying to block the certification of the election. Especially as a sitting president who was involved in that same election, it just does not get any more corrupt than that. Now, having said that, of course Anna's right. The Justice Department is led by a coward, Merrick Garland. Almost all the Democrats in leadership are cowards. They would never prosecute a fellow elite. They're too worried about their own hide. And the minute the Republicans say, oh yeah, we might do it to you, they will back away and run away from the building like their hair is on fire. Donald Trump has already committed many obvious crimes. I mean, look, I can give you half a dozen, but there's no one thinks that there's any dispute that he paid hush money to his mistresses during the campaign. That's a clear campaign finance law violation. It is a crime, and his co-conspirator already went to prison for it. There's absolutely no doubt. And still, DAs who are largely Democratic in those cities and states like New York are also incredible cowards, and they also get hints, etc., from Democratic leadership. Don't do it. We're just doing theatrics here. We're just trying to do marketing, raise more money, and win more elections. But there's no, like, it would be shocking if they held Trump accountable for the many crimes he's committed, including the crime against our own democracy.
You know, we see what the consequences are when the American people lose faith and trust in their institutions. We see it when it comes to losing faith or trust in local police departments and how that plays out. We see it happen on a federal level with various federal agencies, whether it be the CDC in the middle of a global pandemic, or the FDA when it comes to approving vaccines. Look, on one hand, it's frustrating because the lack of trust oftentimes translates into people doing reckless things that only harm themselves. But at the same time, how could you blame them for losing faith in our institutions? Here's a perfect example of how we do have a two-tier justice system. We've known that, especially when it comes to ordinary citizens based on their identity, their background, their race, what have you. But on a federal level, when we see the type of treatment the elite get when they are engaging in potential felonies versus ordinary people. I mean, when it comes to financial fraud, any ordinary American would definitely be prosecuted for that. If they're lying on their IRS forms, if they're lying when they file their taxes, if they're inflating assets to obtain insurance or loans, they're gonna be prosecuted for that. And then you look at Donald Trump, and all of a sudden you have federal prosecutors kind of backing off of their criminal investigation into the financial fraud that he allegedly committed. Financial fraud that was corroborated by his own former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. So I give you all that context to just make this point about how the reason why we're seeing American society crumble the way that it is because the very people in positions of power, the people who are supposed to be those handing out the consequences or ensuring that there's accountability for bad behavior, typically don't do that when it comes to people in positions of power. And that has to change if we're ever gonna get to a better place overall in this country.
Yeah, so I wanna just build off of that. So Republicans commit more crimes, especially white collar crimes. And we've proven that over and over again throughout our coverage. It's not that Democrats don't commit crimes, the Republicans just are brazen. And are over the top at a much higher rate. And part of the reason for that is because Democrats never prosecute white collar crimes, never. So the only way you're ever gonna get prosecuted by a Democrat or Republican is if you stole from other rich people, like Bernie Madoff did, and there's one partner at Goldman Sachs who stole from the other partners at Goldman Sachs. Those are the only well-known cases. Those are the only cases, period. So the rich run this country. You know, we talk about the oligarchs in Russia. Our oligarchs are arguably stronger than the Russian oligarchs. They have an iron grip on both of our parties. They set up this beautiful theater where it looks like there's actually competition going on and back and forth, but Democrats are good cops, Republicans are bad cops. They work together on behalf of the rich. So every actual American knows this, but if you turn on CNN, will you ever see them saying that? Never. They'll treat these stories like, oh, okay, well, then we might have prosecution and we'll see what Merrick Garland does. And they treat it as if it's real. Biden's budget proposes a billionaire tax, and they're all having earnest conversations about it. MSNBC, oh, what a great proposal by Joe Biden. Well, go get him, Tiger. They're all lying to you, it's a joke. They know that that budget's never gonna pass. Do you guys know what the average billionaire pays in taxes? 8%. They pay way less than you. They pay way less than you in federal taxes. So, and then none of them ever go to jail for any of their crime breaking or law breaking. And so here's Donald Trump, the top con man, the top criminal, the one that the Democrats say they are most concerned about, and the one that if he wins a re-election could single-handedly end democracy, especially if you don't hold him accountable now. Still, the Democrats will do nothing in their infinite cowardice and corruption. Now, I tell you all that with great confidence ahead of time. And for all the Democrats who are crying, oh no, Joe Biden and Merrick Garland are great and honest people. They will hold people to account. Okay, you want to bet? I guarantee you I'm right. What would you like to bet? There is no chance you're right. So you will see, and then after I'm right for the 1,000th time in a row, Democratic establishment shills will come out and go, but Cenk, there was nothing we could do. Manchin, cinema, parliamentarian, blah, 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 blah. No, we do the real news. So if Trump is going to be held accountable, there would need to be a massive sea change in American politics that does not exist today. I'll give you one last detail. Anna told you about the financial corruption that Trump and fraud that Trump was definitely involved in. There's no question. His top lawyer said, here is how we cooked our books. There's no question at all, right? The Manhattan DA backed off that investigation. I don't know if it's because he's the world's largest coward or if he's just specifically corrupt or if the Biden administration told him, hey, remember, we're Democrats. We don't ever actually do anything. Everything we say is a lie and for marketing purposes. But either way, the Manhattan DA is currently refusing to, and prosecutors within that office, top prosecutors, really well-respected prosecutors, resigned and then said publicly, we definitely have the evidence, and they are choosing not to pursue it. So the system is rigged, and ironically, it's rigged in favor of Donald Trump by Democrats. So when you have a party this complicit, this corrupt, that's when fascism sees an easy rise to power. And that's exactly what we're in the middle of right now. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.